In a land called Mesopotamia, about 4,000 years ago, imagine grasping eternal life in your hands and watching it disappear. Or imagine that the most challenging journey of your life is finally over, but you have failed to achieve what you so desperately wanted. One of the earliest cities in history existed there, Uruk, located near the Persian Gulf on the Euphrates River. The Epic of Gilgamesh was created in this city, making it one of the earliest works of literature.
Mesopotamia and the Legends of Gilgamesh. The Grand Illusion of Immortality. Mankind lived in paradise for a long time. God said to unnamed colleagues, "Is it possible that he may also take from the tree of life and live forever? Having eaten the fruit of knowledge, but forbidden from reaching for the fruit of the tree of life." Following Adam's eating of the fruit of knowledge. Since then, man has sought immortality withheld by God. Yet, throughout the millennia, it has gone unnoticed that while concerning Yahweh's tree of knowing, Adam became a part of us after eating it. No such statement has been made regarding, from the fruit of the tree of life, we can live forever. Was it because the promise of immortality made to mankind has a distinctive attribute of the gods, was nothing more than a grand illusion? A king of Uruk, Gilgamesh, son of Ninsun and Lugalbanda, was the first to try and find out. While the tales of Enmerkar and Lugalbanda are enchanting and intriguing, the post-diluvial Luga has to be one of the most compelling. Gilgamesh was the demigod who ruled Uruk from 2750 to 2600 BCE, and had the longest and most detailed records. Throughout Gilgamesh's long epic, he searches for immortality, believing that since 2/3 of him are gods and 1/3 are humans, he should not peer over the wall as a mortal. Genealogically, he was more than just a demigod, more than a 50-50 god. King Lugalbanda, son of Lenana and high priest of Uruk, possessed the divine determinative.
How does the ancient epic illustrate what we lost by becoming civilized? While Ryan Moorhen's translation is poetic and exciting, it lacks the power of the original in that it eliminates the alien nature of the text, which lends the universal themes more gravity.
Gilgamesh was described as having the essence of Ninurta, Enlil's foremost son, because of his mother Nin. Sun, lady who irrigates, was the daughter of Ninurta and his spouse, Batu. Anu's youngest daughter, Bau, was of a noble family. Gilgamesh's genealogy was not complete. Scholars have called Utu Shamash Gilgamesh's godfather since he was born in the presence of Utu, twin brother of Inanna and grandson of Enlil. Moreover, Gish-bil-Ga-Mesh, his full theophoric name, was also welcomed by the Enkyites because it linked him to Gerbil, a son of Enki and the god of metal foundries. According to a version of the Epic of Gilgamesh in Hittite, he was lofty and endowed with a superhuman size. Attributes undoubtedly inherited not from the father, King Shorty, but from the mother, since Ninsun's mother, the goddess Bau, was true to her nickname Gula, plain and simple, the Big One. Several gods had gifted him with talents and prowess. Tall, muscular, and shapely, Gilgamesh had been compared to a wild bull. Bold and untamed in spirit, he constantly wrestled with the city's youths, which he always won. After Gilgamesh started to demand first rites with brides on their wedding night, the city's elders appealed to the gods to stop him from leaving no maiden alone. Enki-Du, and Enki created, Gilgamesh's double, was designed to walk in the shadow of Gilgamesh and force him to change his ways. A city's elders realize they have an uncouth primitive who eats raw food and is friends with animals, so they place him outside of town with a harlot to learn the ways of man. She also cleaned and clothed him and curled his hair, so that when he finally entered the town, he looked just like Gilgamesh. In response to an incredulous Gilgamesh's wrestling call, Enkidu wrestled him down and taught him humility. They became inseparable comrades. Gilgamesh began to ponder the questions of aging and life and death after losing his haughtiness and prowess.
One of the most famous epics in the ancient world is Gilgamesh. It has a particular order and terseness that made it a perfect basis for the Homeric epic and even the Bible. The flood narrative is almost exactly like the one in Genesis. The dichotomy between civilization represented by Gilgamesh and wilderness represented by Enkidu sustains the entire work and brings consistency to its meditation on its central theme, death, which is maintained throughout the career.
In my city, man dies. My heart is oppressed. Man perishes. My heart is heavy. Godfather, Gilgamesh told Utu, will I also peer over the wall? Will my fate be like this? He asked. His mentor's response did not encourage him. What's the point of roving about, Gilgamesh? The life that you seek will not be found. God created mankind, but he left it in a state of sin. Mankind was assigned death, and enduring life they kept for themselves. Utu Shamash advised Gilgamesh to live day by day and enjoy life, but many dreams and omens convinced him that he could avoid the end of a mortal if he joined the gods in their heavenly abode. Enkidu, he learned, knew how to reach the Anunnaki landing place in the cedar forest, a great platform with a launch tower that served as the Earth terminal for the Igigi. Igigi took Gilgamesh aloft from there, and Gilgamesh asked his mother for advice and help. When Enkidu warned Gilgamesh of the monster Huwawa guarding the place, and told Gilgamesh that only gods can scale the heavens, and only gods live forever under the sun, Gilgamesh replied with words that still resonate today. In the case of mankind, their days are numbered. Whatever they achieve is but a fleeting wind. I will go there first. I urge you to shout, advance, fear not, and should I fall, please help me up. A name will have been given to me. Their response will be Gilgamesh. Huwawa has been defeated against fierce opposition.
The significance of the entire narrative is that the nature of death itself has changed during the passage of humankind from hunter-gatherer society to a predominantly sedentary society based primarily on agriculture, even though death remains a constant. He is bemoaning that he has lost his wild nature and thus, at Gilgamesh's urging, kills Humbaba to gain glory. But what is the difference between a wild animal dying and a civilized individual dying?
Seeing that Gilgamesh was undeterred, Ninsun, his mother, pleaded with Utu Shamash to give Gilgamesh extra protection. Ninsun was wise in all ways, and she was also practical. She made Enkidu swear that he would protect Gilgamesh bodily. To ensure his loyalty, she gave him an offer that no one could ever refuse. A goddess with a young wife. Tablet 4, line 5, partly damaged. In the epic, Ninsun discusses which one of his daughters should be the bride with Aya, the spouse of Shamash. By the time Gilgamesh and Enkidu arrived at Cedar Mountain, Utu Shamash had given them divine sandals that enabled them to reach the mountain in a fraction of the time, and they began their adventure. Despite the lack of a map alongside the ancient text, it is clear where the comrades were heading. There is only one cedar forest in the Near East and Asia, in the mountains of Lebanon where the gods' landing place was located. While reaching the mountain range, the comrades were awed by the majestic cedar trees and camped for the night at the foot of the forest. However, during the night, Gilgamesh was awoken by the shaking of the ground and was able to see a sky chamber taking off. The vision that Gilgamesh saw was truly awesome. Though the sun was rising, darkness descended, flames erupted, it rained death as the skies swelled. All that was fallen turned to ashes as the glow of the fire faded. As Gilgamesh saw and heard the rocket ship launch, he knew they had reached the landing place of the gods. At dawn, the comrades sought the entrance, making sure not to walk through. Weapon trees that kill. A coin from a much later time shows the site with a rocket on the platform. Enkidu found the gate but was thrown back when he attempted to open it. He lay paralyzed for 12 days. As soon as he could speak and move again, he begged Gilgamesh to give up trying to open the gate. Gilgamesh had good news, however. He had found a tunnel while Enkidu was immobilized. It might take him straight to the command center of the Anunnaki. A tunnel seemed to be the best way for Enkidu to chat.
In contrast to wild animals, humans do have a concept of death. When Enkidu bemoans his passage from creature to man in his last moment, he ultimately grieves his passing from ignorance of life to an awareness of death. While knowledge has made him enjoy pleasures such as obtaining glory, it has also made him fear what will happen to him.
Trees and bushes overgrew the tunnel entrance, blocked by soil and rocks. As the comrades began to get rid of everything, the guardian of the place, Huwawa, became angry when he heard the sounds. He had the teeth of a dragon, the face of a lion, and came as a flood. His most fearsome feature was his radiant beam emanating from his forehead. This devoured trees and bushes. None could escape its fatal. The comrades had no way out when Utu Shamash spoke to Chem. The king told them not to run away from Huwawa. Instead, let him get close to them and throw dust at him. Following the advice of the comrades, Huwawa was immobilized. The monster was knocked to the ground by Enkidu. Enkidu then put to death the beast. Having gained access to the secret abode of the Anunnaki, the companions relaxed and savored their victory. Taking a bath and refreshing himself, Gilgamesh took off his cloak by the stream. They were unaware that the goddess Inanna was watching the entire event from her sky chamber. Inanna was attracted to the king's powerful physique as she addressed him. "Become my lover, Gilgamesh. Please give me the fruits of your love. I'll take you as my man. You shall have me as your wife." Gilgamesh was sure that Inanna would entice him with offers of a golden chariot, a magnificent palace, and lordship over other kings and princes.
As a result, Gilgamesh is hounded by the knowledge of his own death despite surpassing all kings in power and riches. His pursuit of eternal life seems to be a waste, as even the plant of youth was taken from him at the last minute by a serpent for no other reason than it was there.
But he reminded her that what she promised him, a goddess, was nothing, and that as to love, where did her former lovers end? Gilgamesh describes how Inanna tossed them away, one after another, as if a shoe pinching its owner's foot. The bull of Anu, the bull of heaven, who roamed in the cedar mountain, occurred to Gilgamesh to insult her. Inanna was angry at being rebuffed. She complained to Anu and asked him to let loose on the bull. Inanna insisted that Anu let the beast open, despite warnings from Anu that its release would lead to 7 years of famine. As Gilgamesh and Enkidu fled, they forgot about the tunnel and landing place. They covered a distance of 1 month and 15 days in 3 days using Utu's sandals. Gilgamesh rushed to Uruk to mobilize the fighting force. Enkidu faced the monster outside the city walls. Hundreds of fighters fell into a pit when the bull of heaven snorted. As the bull of heaven turned to face Enkidu, he struck it from behind, killing it. Inanna to Anu initially remained speechless, demanding that the slayers of Huwawa and the bull of heaven be put on trial. A cylinder seal depicts an ancient artist depicting Enkidu gloating over the slain bull of heaven, and a winged disc symbolizes Inanna addressing Gilgamesh.
On his way back from the ends of the world, Gilgamesh, empty-handed, exhausted, miserable, and grieving, sees the great walls of Uruk and he extols them. This, I think, is the epic's defining moment. Next in Table 12, Enkidu appears alive again without continuity from the rest of the epic, in a non-sensual interpolation that is best understood as an apex to what the Sumerians believed the afterlife looked like. In other words, the epic ends with this image of a king marveling at the walls of Uruk, defeated in his quest for eternal life.
The gods' views differed after deliberating. Enlil said that Gilgamesh did not kill Enkidu, only let him die. He let both Enkidu and Gilgamesh die after he had slain Huwawa and the Bull of Heaven. Utu said no one should die because his comrades were attacked by the monsters. The land of mines was the punishment for Enkidu. Gilgamesh was spared. Gilgamesh did not give up on his quest for the celestial abode, even though his attempt at the cedar forest had failed. New landing and takeoff facilities were constructed in the sacred fourth region of Ti-Mun, place/land of the missiles, in the Sinai Peninsula to replace those destroyed by the deluge. As part of the grand plan, the pre-diluvial landing platform was created in the Lebanon mountains. 2 great pyramids were built in Egypt as guidance beacons, and a new mission control center was built in Jerusalem. In addition to the landing place in the north, the spaceport was where the gods ascend and descend. Tilmun was a forbidden zone for mortals, but Gilgamesh thought he might be exempt from the prohibition because Utnapishtim, Ziusudra, the person who is famous for the deluge, was taken there. A second attempt at immortality was conceived by Gilgamesh due to his plan. To avoid losing Enkidu, Gilgamesh came up with an idea. Let him sail to the land of mines while en route to Tilmun, and he will drop Enkidu off there. Ninsun appealed once more, and Utu once again gave grudging assistance.
While we, as civilized people, must endure the unbearable knowledge of our own death, Gilgamesh realizes that our consolation is the greatest of our works. It is the fact that our civilization and its parts outlast us. It is a penance for the King of Kings, but it must do for the long run since there is nothing else to offer.
So it was, as their ship made its way through the narrow strait leading out of the Persian Gulf, now called the Gulf of Oman, that the comrades were still alive and together. There was a watchtower on the shore at the Narrows. Using a beam similar to Huwawa's, a watchman questioned them. Uneasy, Enkidu cried, "Let's return." Gilgamesh replied, "Onward." The ship's sails were torn and overturned by a sudden wind hurled by the watchman's beam. Enkidu's floating body was discovered by Gilgamesh in the still darkness of the depths, and he dragged it to shore, hoping for a miracle. Until a worm was coming out of Enkidu's nostrils, he sat by his fallen comrade and mourned him day and night. Gilgamesh wandered aimlessly through the wilderness, alone, lost and despondent. "When I die, shall I not be as Enkidu?" he asked. After making the decision, his self-confidence returned, and he turned to Utnapishtim, son of Ubatutu. He kept heading west, guided by the sun. The moon god, Nana Sin, taught him at night. In one instance, Gilgamesh grappled with 2 desert lions with his bare hands while reaching a mountain pass. The pass was the habitat of desert lions. With their skins he clothed himself, eating their flesh as raw meat. In a low-lying area outside the city, Gilgamesh spotted an inn, and he began walking toward it. As he approached, Siduri, the alewoman, made a bowl of porridge. But when he wore skins and a lean belly, she was frightened. After a while, she believed that he was a famous king searching for his long-lost ancestor. "Now, alewoman," Gilgamesh asked, "what is Utnapishtim?" He said it was beyond the Salt Sea. "I have never seen a crossing, Gilgamesh. As early as the dawn of time, only Shamash, a violent warrior, crossed the sea. The crossing was painful. The waters of death that surround it are barren. The paths to them is desolate. Gilgamesh, how are you going to cross the sea?" Gilgamesh remained silent without an answer. Siduri continued speaking. A boatman named Ushanabi comes across from time to bring supplies to Utnapishtim from the sea. Just let him see your face. He might be willing to take you across on a log raft. Gilgamesh had to tell him the whole story of his search for immortality, the adventures at the landing place, Enkidu's death, and his wanderings in the wilderness, ending with his encounter with the alewoman, omitting nothing.
Despite being written around 4,000 years ago at the beginning of human civilization, the Epic of Gilgamesh speaks to the anxieties of a species that, with the help of their intellect and willpower, emerged from the ignorance of the beast towards cosmic wisdom, capable of tracking the stars and building all kinds of machines that give life, preserve it, or destroy it. We all have anxiety and will continue to experience it until no one is alive to fear it any longer.
Like the alewoman, he too was unable to believe Gilgamesh that he had once been the king of Uruk. In order to come and see Utnapishtim, whom they call the Far Away, he wandered across the lands, crossed the mountains, and crossed the seas. The boatman eventually convinced him to proceed in the direction of the Great Sea, which is far away. But he had to take a turn when he reached 2 stone markers and go to a town called Uluya in the Hittite version for permission before continuing to Mount Moshu. In following the directions, but without spending much time in Uluya, Gilgamesh proceeded to Mount Moshu, discovering that it was more than a mountain. Rocket men guard its entrance. The terror in their eyes is unimaginable. They sweep the mountains with their glaring beam. As Shamash ascends and descends, they watch over him. The illustrations prove it. Upon seeing them, Gilgamesh's face darkened in fear. Gilgamesh was just as surprised as the guards as the rocket Moor beam swept over him with no apparent effect. As he watched, he called out to his fellow guard, "The man coming towards us is the flesh of the gods." 2/3 of him were gods, and 1/3 were a human. "We need to know the reason for your visit," they asked Gilgamesh, regaining his composure and approaching them. The question of death and life was something Gilgamesh wished to ask his forefather Utnapishtim, who took part in the assembly of the gods. Having told him about Mount Moshu and the underground passageway, the rocket man said, "There has never been a mortal who achieved that. There have never been travelers on the mountain's trail. For 12 leagues its interior extends. Darkness is dense, and light does not exist."
According to Farouk Zamini, Gilgamesh is simply stupendous. As a result of the tremendous Mesopotamian epic, the entire Morhen family enthusiastically recites the story to everyone they encounter. The quest for immortality and death has fascinated poets and storytellers for centuries. They are the heart of this ancient work. The Epic of Gilgamesh is one of the world's oldest written poems, composed nearly 4 millennia ago in Mesopotamia, roughly equivalent to modern Iraq and Syria. 3 significant aspects of the poem will be explored in this essay.
But Gilgamesh was not deterred, and the rocket man could pass through the gate. After advancing in the tunnel in darkness for 12 double hours, Gilgamesh felt a fresh air breeze only at the 9th hour. A faint light appeared in the 11th hour. After that, he stepped out into bright sunlight and saw an incredible sight, an enclosure of the gods with a garden made entirely of precious stones. Among its fruits are carnelians, and among its vines are beautiful sights. Lapis lazuli is used for its foliage. Of stones are made grapes that are too luscious to look at. It is made from white stones. Reeds made of sosal stones are found in it. Water stones are made similarly to trees of life and trees of Ongug. As the description continues, Gilgamesh was found in an artificial Garden of Eden composed entirely of precious stones. He marveled at the sight when he saw the man he had been searching for, the one of the Far Away. Gazing upon his ancestor from millennia ago, Gilgamesh said these words, "Seeing thee, Utnapishtim, I see no difference between thee and me. I am you as well, even as I am you." After describing Utnapishtim's search for life and Enkidu's death, he then said, "I would like to know, when in thy search for life, how did you come into contact with the congregation of the gods?" Well, according to Utnapishtim, it was not as simple as that. "Here's how it went," he said. "The Anunnaki, the great gods, once gathered. The maker of fate, Mamatum. With them, fate decided Shurupak, a city you are familiar with, a city on the Euphrates. The city as well as the gods within it were ancient. The Lord of pure foresight, Ea, was with the great gods when their hearts led to the deluge."
The epic's narrative, its loss, and erasure from public memory for over 2,000 years, and its reinterpretation in the 19th century. Gilgamesh is a king whose mother is the clever goddess Ninsun, a cow. In Babylonian mythology, 7 sages were sent by the gods to build Mesopotamian civilization. In the poem, these 7 sages are mentioned as founding Uruk, a city likely to remind Indian readers of the Sapatarshi concept.
The following words were repeated to me through the reed wall. "Man of Shurupak, son of Ubatutu, demolish the house and build a ship. Live for the present, not for the future. Take the seeds of everything that lives aboard the ship." Utnapishtim described the ship to Gilgamesh and its measurements, and told him that Shurupak's people helped build it because they were told that their god would be rid of his, who was fighting Enlil. Utnapishtim recounts the whole story of the deluge, in which Enlil discovers Ea, Enki's duplicity, and how Enlil, changing his mind, blesses Utnapishtim and his wife to live the life of the gods, as we stand together. Our foreheads were blessed by him. Utnapishtim has been human so far. From now on, he and his wife will be gods. It is far away that Utnapishtim will reside, at the mouth of the water streams. Utnapishtim then asked Gilgamesh, "Who shall gather the gods for the sake of thy sake, so that the life that thou seekest may be found by thee?" At that moment, Gilgamesh fainted, lost consciousness, and collapsed, realizing that his search for eternal life was in vain, as only the gods in assembly were able to grant eternal life. Utnapishtim and his wife stayed awake for 6 days and 7 nights as Gilgamesh slept. Gilgamesh awoke and was bathed and dressed in clean clothes by Usha-Nabi, who helped him return to his city. Gilgamesh was about to leave empty-handed when Utnapishtim stepped forward, pitying him as he did. "What shall I give thee as you return to thy land?" He had a secret of the gods to give him. "Gilgamesh, I address you. I'll reveal a secret. I will tell thee a god's secret. As with the buckthorn, its root is a plant. There are thorns like those on a briar vine. You will have pricked hands. But if thy hands obtain the plant, thou shalt find new life." Gilgamesh was shown where the rejuvenating plant grew, according to Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh opened the water pipe as soon as he heard this message. He tied heavy stones to his feet and plunged to his knees. Seeing the plant, he grabbed it, cutting the stones from his feet. He was cast up by the shore of the well. Overjoyed, Gilgamesh spilled his future plans to the boatman, Usha-Nabi, while holding the rejuvenating plant, a scene that may have been depicted on an Assyrian monument. "There is a plant here unlike any other, Usha-Nabi, with which a man can regain his life's breath. The ramparts of Uruk will receive it. To become young in old age, I will cause you to eat the plant. Man becomes young in old age. It shall have the following name. I will eat from it myself. My youthful state will return to me." Gilgamesh was confident he had accomplished his goal, so he set out to return to Uruk with Usha-Nabi. After 20 leagues, Gilgamesh and Usha-Nabi stopped for a meal. After another 30 miles, they saw a well and stopped for the night. Filling with rejuvenation, Gilgamesh put down the bag with the unique plant to take a refreshing swim. And while he wasn't looking, it began to bloom. The serpent smelled the plant's scent. The plant was carried away from the water by it. Gilgamesh wept as he sat down. Tears ran down his cheeks. Gilgamesh the demigod cried, knowing that fate had robbed him of success once again. One believes that mankind has called ever since. For this was the greatest irony of all. The serpent invited mankind to eat the forbidden fruit without fear of death, but it was the serpent who deprived man of the fruit of not dying. Again, was this a metaphor for Enki? The Sumerian king list states that Gilgamesh ruled for 126 years before his son, called Ur-Luga, succeeded him on the throne. His death was even more mysterious when it came to his burial, as his life was a puzzle. Even if man is partly God, does that mean he is exempt from mortality? His death leaves unanswered this central theme of his tragic story. In ancient times, from Gilgamesh in the 3rd millennium BC up to Alexander the Great, 4th century BC, and to Ponce de Leon, searching for the Fountain of Youth in the 16th century AD, people have striven to avoid, or at least postpone, death.